All right, let us see this supposed clue that solves security breach, aka a game where the story is changed minimum 5 separate times. A game that is confusing to this day because what was real, what was canon, what wasn't canon, what ending was meant to be the real ending, what endings are just fake and made up in the comic book strip we see in Ruin. Who knows? Let's see those answers.
In July of 2023, we were officially introduced to the next big bad of the franchise, the Mimic. This is great, but I keep going back to the same question. Was this always the plan? When Scott and
Absolutely not. Off rip, 100%, the Mimic was not the plan. Because like I said in the introduction and everything, I feel like it is widely accepted at this point that Security Breach, their story from Steel Wool, has been changed. Now, whether that's because there was a disconnect, miscommunication of what Scott Cawthon told Steel Wool for what to do with Security Breach, and there's a disconnect of what Steel Wool decided to do as well, especially having stuff with the story change up and everything. Regardless, whatever was the plan for Security Breach and what we as fans got in December of 2021, right? Regardless, was not the plan whatsoever. I refuse to believe the Mimic was planned on Security Breach because there was no plans, there was no details for the Mimic to exist in Security Breach at all. Based on the teaser images, based on the trailers, like, Vanessa was supposed to be the villain of the series. It was not supposed to be Burn Trap. William Afton was not supposed to be a thing in Security Breach. The Blob, the conglomeration of all these separate animatronics, was also not supposed to be a thing because it was not talked about, referenced whatsoever in Security Breach. So 1,000%, what we got in Security Breach was not the plan. And Scott even said himself in an interview, I can't remember who the interview was with, I think it was Daco, but he said verbatim that the plan he had in mind was totally different than what we as fans got. He's come out and said that, like, he may have given, he said something like he gave the start and end point for Steel Wool for Security Breach, but he did not give them the details of how to get there. It was up to Steel Wool to get to those details. And obviously that's where the miscommunication happened. And it made even worse with the delays and the story changing because, once again, who knows if it is true that stuff like MatPat's theories came out and that caused the story to change multiple times pending release. I don't know if that's true or not, but that is widely accepted. But regardless, at the end of the day, without a doubt, the Mimic was not planned for Security Breach. I think the Mimic is something that was created as a damage control thing, where it's like, hey, people didn't like Security Breach, especially with the endings of what ending is real. Vanessa was supposed to be a big part in this story, this new saga of FNAF. That didn't really happen, so as the damage control, let's bring in this Mimic character that people seem to latch onto. Let's run with that now.
Steel Wool were making Security Breach, was the Mimic always going to be the big reveal? Well, after diving back into Security Breach, I think that answer is yes. This theory has been months in the making, and I can't wait to share it with you. Let's get started.
I dispute, once again, I don't think the Mimic was planned out in Security Breach. I think it's something that was damage control because of the negative reception that Security Breach got. But I will hear you out, John.
my research, I found that the Tales from the Pizzaplex books were really trying to point us in the right direction. Basically, some of the events that take place in the books also happen in the games, but they aren't completely the same. And the first of these events revolves around how the Mimic got to the Pizzaplex. In the books, they make it very clear that the Mimic wasn't always at the Pizzaplex, it was shipped to the Pizzaplex. In the books, before the
Was it shipped to the Pizzaplex? Hold on, let me think. I'm trying to... Let's see. Shipped to the Pizzaplex. I'm trying to think of the history from the books. Because we know the Mimic came from the Edwin story. We know the Mimic was AI created by Edwin to entertain his son David, because David was a needy son who needed attention, and that took away Edwin from his work. Mimic was created. Chaos ensues. David dies after running and getting hit by a car. The Mimic AI software starts mimicking David, and Edwin pours out his agony and frustration into the robot Mimic and then leaves it abandoned in the factory. And that is, at least in my opinion, what we are going to, as a location in the Secret of the Mimic game. We're going to the factory where Edwin created the Mimic. So it was abandoned after Edwin poured his agony into it, and then he left. So, left and taken to the Pizzaplex, even though it was left at Edwin's factory. Maybe. It's also weird as well, because we know the Pizzaplex was built on top of the FNAF 6 burned location. And we know the Mimic is underneath that FNAF 6 location. It goes Pizzaplex at the top, FNAF 6 location underneath, Mimic underneath that. So the Mimic went from the factory, Edwin's factory, to the Pizzaplex, underneath the FNAF 6 location, underneath that, and then locked away. Maybe? It's just, it seems like a multi-point plan that it doesn't fit cleanly. But then again, nothing with the series ever does.
Pizzaplex was done being built, there was a construction crew working on the FNAF 6 pizzeria under the Pizzaplex. Suddenly, a big shipment arrived out of nowhere, and this shipment included a bunch of, quote, state-of-the-art animatronics and the Mimic. The Mimic stuck out from the rest of the animatronics because it was old and burnt. Meanwhile, the other animatronics in the shipment looked brand new. The construction workers were told that the delivery was happening, but were confused about what the delivery contained. Saying, quote, state-of-the-art animatronics? It was weird to be receiving these now, when the building was little more than an open framework. This is how the Mimic got to the Pizzaplex in the books, but what about the games? Well, throughout Security Breach, there's these white sticky notes scattered everywhere. Everywhere you turn in this mall, you can find more of these white sticky notes.
And as I was playing my playthrough of Security Breach and everything, I tried to do as much lore hunting as possible. I myself found these sticky notes, and I tried to come to terms with it and try to come up with the answers of what they mean and everything. At the end of the day, I don't think I came up with an answer, but I just want to call attention to that. Shameless plug.
Which tells me that Steelwool really wanted us to see them. And if you look at enough of the sticky notes, they actually start to tell a story. And I can actually put this into a timeline. A FNAF Security Breach white sticky note timeline. First, we see import pending 6 a.m., indicating that a shipment was scheduled to arrive at the Pizzaplex at 6 a.m. We then see a label confirming that the shipment arrived at the Pizzaplex, along with a package number and the word return next to some question marks. The question marks tell us that they don't know where this package came from.
Have we got an answer to that package number? Maybe that's what this theory dives into.
Then things get worse. We get a sticky note saying unknown and a bunch of scribbles, followed by a bunch of package labels with question marks on them. If you haven't picked up on it already, this is almost the exact same scenario from the books. A shipment arrives at the Pizzaplex and the workers are confused about what it is. But it doesn't stop there. In the games, we actually learn who sent that shipment and what was in it. In FNAF AR, we learn about the Fazbear Funtime Delivery Service. This is a real delivery service in-universe where you can have an animatronics shipped to your house for special events. In order to do this, Fazbear Entertainment actually rebuilt all of the old animatronics from the past. And the company responsible for shipping these animatronics to people's houses was DLZ Shipping Solutions. We see Jimmy from the shipping company talking to Fazbear Entertainment in the FNAF AR emails. Fazbear is asking Jimmy for help concerning a virus in their system, but he never responds. Later on in the emails, someone finally does respond, and it's Vanessa. Vanessa created a fake email address and proceeded to take over for Jimmy and gain access to DLZ Shipping Solutions. Lewis from Fazbear Entertainment calls her out for this. Quote, "I didn't want to put this in writing, but over the weekend, did you happen to create an IT department email address for yourself and use company credentials to reach out to a subcontractor and access their system?" With Vanessa now in control of the shipping company, she sends a shipment to the Pizzaplex. This shipment is the one we see on the white sticky notes. I know this because grouped with all of the shipping sticky notes is one that says "Remember Jimmy," referring to Jimmy from DLZ Shipping Solutions. So we know Vanessa sent this unknown shipment to the Pizzaplex.
Was it, I will say this, was it Vanessa herself controlling the shipping solutions and took over and everything? Because first of all, elaborate plan, number one, seems it's a very, very elaborate plan that seems extremely complicated. But two, is it Vanessa herself doing it, or is it her being absorbed and manipulated by the glitch trap virus that's forcing her to do those things? Because we know in the FNAF AR emails, someone named Vanessa is emailing several different things, and that catches red flags of HR. Because one day she's Google searching stuff like the migration pattern of like butterflies and everything, and then other times she just types help on its own, and the emails call attention. It's like, did you type in help on its own? Like, what were you expecting to get from that? And other ones are like how to reduce self-compliance, which people interpret that as glitch trap trying to find a way to get Vanessa to fully comply to his demands because she's a reluctant follower. And there's other ones where it's like how far can a human body can be severed without losing consciousness.
But what was in it? Well, I believe it was all of the FNAF AR animatronics and the Mimic. Just like how in the books, it was a bunch of state-of-the-art animatronics and the Mimic. Need more proof? In Rockstar Row and Security Breach, you can find a bunch of things on display, including this empty stage from FNAF VR.
Is that stage from... Hold up, John. Hold up. Is that the stage from FNAF VR?
And the Mimic.
Because I called attention on my playthrough of Security Breach, once again, shameless plug, and is it the stage?
Need more proof? In Rockstar...
Yes, I do. I do indeed need more proof.
Row and Security Breach, you can find a bunch of things...
Because I went through this Rockstar Row, going through the animatronics, trying to find as many Easter eggs as possible going through this room. So I went through this room pretty thoroughly. And I don't know if I call attention to that, saying that the stage is from FNAF VR.
On display, including this...
That stage is FNAF VR. Why would it be FNAF VR? Right, like... Maybe? Because I know there's other Easter eggs, there's other details from FNAF VR in this Rockstar Row. There's a lot of stuff from the Curse of Dreadbear DLC. There's the Nightmare Balloon Boy, like, wood carving from the maze, the Scarecrow maze. What's it called? Fall maze? Duh! It's something like that. It's that minigame where you run away from Fotsy in the maze. That cutout was taken from it. There's also one from Ennard that was also taken from that minigame. So there are details from Help One in VR in this room, but could this not just be just a normal stage? Because there's also stuff from, like, the blue telephone is from the FNAF 4 bedroom, and there's also, like, posters from FNAF 1 and FNAF 2. Could that not just be a stage? Maybe. It's one of those things where it's like, we've seen plenty of stages in FNAF games. Why is this specifically the VR one? That's my counterpoint. What's up, Dakota? Welcome. Welcome to my wrapping my head around very minuscule details that probably don't mean much.
Empty stage from FNAF VR. Instead of just closing the curtain, they left it open to show that the stage is empty.
Like, I do see the blue, I guess the pink, the glowing plate lights, and I do see the checkered pattern on the bottom and top, which does look like the VR stage. I don't know. It's just a weird detail to call out and everything. But I'm curious how this plays into it all. So I'm not trying to reject the theory yet.
This tells me that Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica were once on that stage. We know it couldn't have been the OG Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica because they're...
Like, that stage is different. I agree. That stage is different because, yeah, you have the checkered pattern, but the plates, lights behind them is very clearly different. Because on the security breach stage, it's single lights, and they look like records, right? So these clearly is not the FNAF 1 stage. So maybe...
They're long gone at this point. We literally see Foxy's rusted torso in a display case. It had to have been the rebuilt versions of the animatronics for the Funtime delivery service. I think this because if you look in front of the stage, you can see the shipping label with the question marks on it. The FNAF AR animatronics that were shipped to the Pizzaplex were once on that stage. And
were they? Because so the FNAF AR animatronics from the game where the AR animatronics are shipped out to you from Fazbear Entertainment, that's canon in the universe. Like, FNAF VR is a canon VR game in the universe as well, right? Both those things are canon in the universe. FNAF AR, its canon purpose is to ship out recreated animatronics from the popular games from Fazbear Entertainment to you for birthday parties and what have you, right? And then they're corrupted by the virus and they try to kill you because, of course, think about what Sears talking about here, right? That's FNAF AR. FNAF VR, it's a canon VR game in universe, right? It's not just a VR game for us in the real world to play and everything. Like, no, it's a VR game in universe that is meant to poke fun at, all the failures from Fazbear Entertainment, to address the skeletons in the closet, to sue the rogue indie game developer and everything. So it's not just like a creative new game for us as, FNAF fans to play and everything. It's a VR game in universe. So how does that VR game in universe connect to the AR game where the animatronic shipped to you doorstep? I need more connective tissue than that, right?
because if you look in front of the stage, you can see the shipping label with the question marks on it. The FNAF AR animatronics that were shipped to the Pizzaplex were once on that stage, and now, I believe, reside in the Blob. This is why we see a bunch of animatronics in the Blob that should no longer exist. These are the rebuilt versions of them for the Funtime delivery service. Reside in the Blob. This is why we see a bunch of animatronics in the Blob that should no longer exist. These are the rebuilt for—
Why are they? Why are the animatronics in the Blob the animatronics from FNAF AR? and not the originals. Right? Because couple problems with this. Number one, think of how many animatronics are in the blob. We know there's Baby here. We know there's Mangle, FNAF 2 Mangle. We know there's 1 or 2 Endos. We know there's the puppet. Get into that one later. We know there's FNAF 1 Chica. We know there's Funtime Freddy from Security Breach. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Funtime Freddy from Sister Location. And that's like the head of the whole blob and everything. When you get jump scared by the blob, that's the head you see is Funtime Freddy. But a couple problems with that is, number one, if I'm not mistaken, the puppet is not in the FNAF AR game. Right? So, if that is true, that what you're implying, that the animatronics in the blob, I wish there was a better name for it, but in this conglomeration, this blob, if all these animatronics from that are from the AR game, then how did the puppet get there? If the puppet's not from FNAF AR. And follow up, the puppet, their tiered tracks on the mask are gone. So, how do you explain that? How do you also explain some animatronics, their heads, their lights, their eyes are light up and others they're not? Like, if I'm not mistaken, Mangle's eyes are light up, but Baby's aren't. How do you explain that? Because they're AR animatronics. Right? It just doesn't make sense of how the AR animatronics got put in the blob. There's not much connective tissue there. Because if that is true, if your interpretation is right, that the FNAF AR animatronics are indeed the ones that are in the blob, they're not the OGs or whatever, then why are some eyes light up and then why are the tear tracks on the puppet gone? Right? Why are those details very intentionally done? Those details are intentional. I refuse to believe otherwise. There is no coincidences in this universe. Why are those details there then? If these are FNAF AR animatronics.
Versions of them for the Funtime delivery service. So we know that this shipment to the Pizzaplex included all of the FNAF AR animatronics, but what about the Mimic? Is there any proof that the Mimic was also shipped to the Pizzaplex? The following discoveries are the reason I decided to make this video, so hold on to your seats. So we know that
Got it, let's go. I'm ready.
this shipment to the Pizzaplex is a big deal in the books and the games, but they're not 100% the same. The same things happen, but some details are swapped out. Like, for example, in the books, the shipment arrived to a construction crew before the Pizzaplex was done being built. But in the games, this shipment arrived after the Pizzaplex was done being built. So the question now is, does what happens next in the books also happen in the games? In the books, after the shipment arrives, one of the construction workers takes the Mimic and basically tricks it into doing his busy work. The workers were told to tear off the limbs and heads of a bunch of endoskeletons and pile them up. So the construction worker proceeded to plug his laptop into the Mimic and program it to do the job for them. The Mimic then began tearing off the limbs and heads of the endoskeletons, but once it ran out of endoskeletons, it started tearing apart the construction workers. Now, let me point you towards the games. In Security Breach, you can find a duffel bag message titled Job Security. The message reads as follows: "Where is everyone? Leo was the only one who had a copy of the maze control key, but I haven't seen him for months. Maybe that creepy bot knows where the key is." Leo was supposed to train it to work the maze. Instead, he tricked the bot into doing busy work under the daycare theater. I'll check after the all-staff meeting tonight. So we have an employee that tricked a creepy bot into doing his busy work. And now he hasn't been seen for months. This is exactly what happens in the books, just with some details swapped out. This creepy bot is something I can't believe I haven't noticed.
Yes and no. Well, yes, but actually no. Because on one hand, yes, I agree. Like, say the part where they say instead he tricked the bot into doing busy work, 100% agree. That is tied to the Mimic. One-to-one parallel. Like, you have me, I'm on board. Where do I sign? Right? I'm on board with that. And it says one, the creepy bot. Right? The bot. So it's singular, which would also tie to the Mimic. So I agree with all that. However, doesn't fit fully clean because it's supposed to train it to work the maze and say you trick the bot into doing basic work under the daycare theater. And if I'm not mistaken, under the daycare theater is you go to underneath that like warehouse factory area, and that's where you do the whole red light green light game with the endos. If I'm not mistaken, that's what's under the daycare theater. Right? Is those endos. But we know the Mimic did not come from the daycare theater. Because in FNAF Ruin, the Mimic came from under Rotsu Raceway. So, the creepy bot under the daycare theater, where we play red light, green light with the endos, the Mimic was underneath Rotsu Raceway. Two separate areas in the Pizzaplex. I don't know about that. That doesn't fit cleanly. Because how do you explain, how does the Mimic go from the daycare theater to under Rotsu Raceway? I don't know about that. Also, I just want to call attention to this. If you're talking about creepy bots with daycare, Sun and Moon, especially Moon, is creepy. Just call it as I see it. And we know Sun and Moon, and Eclipse, I guess, if we're talking about Ruin, we know they are connected to the Mimic because... Hold on, let me pull it up. We pull up Eclipse. And we pull up the Mimic. There's a detail. And once again, it's not mine, but I want to call attention to it. Hold up, bear with me. Okay. So if I pull up these images, so there's Eclipse from FNAF Ruin. And if I pull up the Mimic from FNAF Ruin, so same game, mind you, I'll call attention to this detail. And once again, this is not my own detail, but other people have brought this up, so I want to call attention to it as well. You see something very interesting? You see the one-to-one parallel there? Look at the teeth. Right? Look at the teeth. They're all separated one by one in like a little pentagram hexagon pattern. Right? That cannot be a coincidence. Right? Very similar to FNAF 6 with Henry's design, where we believe animatronics built by Henry has like the split jawline right? Because you see that on the Miyako Melodies and the Rockstar animatronics, Lefty and everything, where the jaw is like split in two and everything with a little prawn to connect the two pieces of the jaw together. The teeth are very, very, very similar, right? I just want to call attention to that. So I bring that up and everything because, the creepy bot could be, the son and night daycare attendant, which, let's face it, it is creepy. And we know their design, at least teeth-wise, are pretty much one-to-one. So my point is, how do you explain, to wrap this up, how do you explain the Mimic, which we know in Ruin is trapped under Rotsu Raceway? How do they get under the daycare theater?
Before. I can't think of anything else this could be referencing other than the Mimic. Creepy Bot is singular. They're talking about one specific animatronic, which means it can't be one of the many Glamrock endoskeletons. The only other character I could see this applying to is the daycare attendant. But even then, the daycare attendant has a name. Why use Creepy Bot? Also,
I mean, let's face it is creepy. Let's just say it as it is. The daycare attendant is creepy.
we get a duffel bag message about a kid having nightmares after visiting the daycare, which
we don't know. Hold up. Night terrors, customer complaint. My son never had sleeping problems, but after spending evening in the daycare, he refuses to sleep with the lights out anymore. He just cries and cries, and then when I do, he wets the bed. We do not know, just like all these messages from Security Breach, we do not know when this message was sent in. We don't know if this message and the one talking about the creepy bot under the daycare attendant or creepy bot under the daycare theater, we don't know the timeline of these messages. What came first, right? So that would be my counterpoint. If we had got dates of when they were received, then yeah, it's a different story. But as it stands right now, we don't know when the message was received when.
Also, we get a duffel bag message about a kid having nightmares after visiting the daycare, which implies that the daycare attendant is already working the daycare and wouldn't be available to do anything else. So not only was the Mimic included in the shipment to the Pizzaplex, the staff were aware of its existence and it was openly being used throughout the building. Need more proof? In the
Yes, we do need more proof, indeed.
books, we learn one important piece of information. The Glamrock endoskeletons are version 2 of the Mimic endoskeleton.
Version 1, version 2. Tell you not confirmed, just my theory. I'm sorry if my camera's blocking it, but that's what it says in the bottom right corner. It says, this tell you not confirmed, just my theory. Which, first of all, good on you for putting that disclaimer. First, I want to hear that again. Because there's something I want to hear again.
So not only was the Mimic included in the shipment to the Pizzaplex, the staff were aware of its existence and it was openly being used throughout the building. Need more proof? In the books, we learn one important piece of information. The Glamrock endoskeletons are version 2 of the Mimic endoskeleton. Basically,
Are they a version 2 of the Mimic Endo? So, first of all, the Mimic being version 1 of something, I'm totally on board. I agree with. That seems like that's pretty widely accepted in the community. That the Mimic, regardless of whatever it is, how it's connected, is an old creation that's been along for maybe longer than any other animatronic in the entire series. I'm on board with that. But paying the connection between the Mimic and the endos under the daycare theater, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Fazbear Entertainment took the design and functionality of the Mimic and used it for the Glamrock endos. This is backed up in the games. In Security Breach, you can find blueprints for the Glamrock endos. And on those blueprints, it says that the Glamrock endos are the new generation of endos.
New generation of endos, but
implying that there was a previous version, which was the Mimic.
but that's just the thing though. because there's plenty of endos in this universe. There's Endo 01, Endo 02, Endo 01A, Endo 01B that are diving the character encyclopedia, right? Like,
it for the Glamrock endos. This is backed up, and also we get a it for the Glam or the new generation of endos, implying that there was a previous version.
Right, but there's plenty of endos in the series, so it's a loose connection at best, saying these endos from Security Breach are connected to the Mimic, because there's plenty of other endos in the series that we see in games, so we know they're confirmed, but we know they exist. You're just ignoring those to fit, oh, Endo must be the Mimic. Because then you're ignoring the other very clearly defined named Endos in the series. Right? Like, if the Endo one from Security Breach, if that's the only Endo we've seen in this entire series, and then you put the connection to the Mimic, it's a stronger argument. But the fact that we've seen endos before numerous times, I don't see the connection of endo here in Security Breach, Mimic, right? When there's plenty of other endos throughout the series that are just ignored.
Which was the Mimic. And there's one thing that the Mimic and the Glamrock endoskeletons have in common. They're both drawn to sound. In Ruin, Helpy drops a piece of information about the Glamrocks that we've never heard before. He says experienced employees use intercom recordings to direct animatronic performers to specific locations, you know, for autographs and photo ops. A key game mechanic in Ruin is using sound to lure the Glamrocks away from us. This feature directly came from the Mimic. In the books, it's established that the main way to lure the Mimic away is by using sound. And among the sticky notes about the unknown shipment to the Pizzaplex, there's one that says, it is drawn to sound.
That is important. Hold on, I want to highlight.
The Pizzaplex, there's one that says...
I'm pausing there because that is important detail. That is important, and I like that. I like that you're calling attention to it, that it is drawn to sound. Because that is very clearly important. It referring to one singular thing. I'm on board with that. However, very similar to my nitpick counter argument with there's multiple endos in the series, so the connection doesn't really fit that cleanly, everything. This detail about drawing a sound is the same idea. Because let's just go game by game of animatronics that we know about are drawn to sound, or sound is a game mechanic that we use to lure animatronics away to win. You have FNAF 3, Springtrap, using Balloon Boy's voice audio lure to lure Springtrap away from you as the player. That's the entire game of FNAF 3, because Springtrap's the only real animatronic that can kill you. Everything else is hallucinations, right? In, let's see, FNAF 4, that's about sound, but that's more about listening, not drawing animatronics away from you. That's the entire game of FNAF 6, is animatronics in a vent bunker with you, and you use an audio lure to lure the animatronics away from your event. That's the entire game of FNAF 6. FNAF 7, you have the Miracle Melodies in the event that you have an audio lure to draw them away from them getting you. And yeah, Ruin with the animatronics at the sound illusion, right? Like, once again, very similar to the Endo argument. If the Mimic and the animatronics in FNAF Ruin are the only times that we in the entire series have used audio lures as a game mechanic, then yes, I'm 100% on board on this connection. But the fact that there's multiple games in the series, multiple characters drawn to sound as well, it weakens the argument. Because I would make the argument that drawn to sound is, at this point in the series, just a game mechanic. Where multiple characters drawn to sound. Hell, anything's drawn to sound. You, as a person, you make a noise somewhere, someone will get attracted to it. So, I don't know about that connection. It is drawn to sound is important. 1,000%. It is drawn to sound is important, has meaning, has importance, has plot relevance. 1,000% agree. It doesn't fit cleanly that it's referring to the Mimic because there's multiple games in the series that use the sound mechanic as a way to lure animatronics away from you. Right? It's not just mutually exclusive to the Mimic.
It is drawn to sound. Just like the creepy bot description from earlier, it is singular, which means whoever wrote this was talking about one specific animatronic, and I believe that to be the Mimic. So we know that the Mimic was shipped to the Pizzaplex, and we know that the staff knew about it. But what happens after that? Well, let me point you towards the Endo Daycare in Security Breach. This area has been overlooked for so long because we didn't really know what to make of it until Help Wanted 2 came out. In the Endo Daycare minigame in Help Wanted 2, it's our job to teach an endo how to behave. We learned that the endos are essentially toddlers that need to be taught what's right and wrong. This is why this area resembles a daycare.
Here, young animatronic endoskeletons learn how to associate with guests. Motivation chips encourage our youth to one day develop a personality and become the next Freddy, Chica, or TBD Pizzaplex star.
There's even this Easter egg in Security Breach when you bring Glamrock Freddy into the Endo Daycare.
I have never been allowed in here before. This must be where I was born.
He said...
Oh, hold up. I want to read that full text because that is important. And honestly, I kind of regret that I didn't do this in my playthrough of Security Breach because that is a cool detail. Alright, so this is the first time seeing this. I've never been allowed in here before. This must be where I was born. Look at all the endos. They're all the same. Have I always been a Freddy? Am I Monty with a different shell? What if I'm not the first Glamrock Freddy? Are there more of me at other pizzerias? Do we all feel the same? Am I special? If I'm mass-produced, am I still art? Huh. First of all, anyone else get, especially that last line, am I special? If I'm mass-produced, am I still art? Anyone else get the vibe that's a lot like Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story? His whole crisis where he felt like he was special, he was a superhero and everything, and then he went to some toy factory and then saw like 1,000 Buzz Lightyears and everything and realized, damn, I am not special, I'm just a toy and everything. Everyone else get that vibe from that text, or is it just me? Anyway, but this text, have I always been a Freddy? Am I Monty with a different shell? We know that's also being confirmed as well because in the beginning of Security Breach, when Vanessa first interacts with Freddy, or not the first time, it's when Vanessa has Freddy in that incubation chamber where we go to upgrade Freddy throughout the game in parts and service. She says that, you know, I'm going to go find the kid. I'm going to go find Gregory. And, you know, if Freddy, if you've been part of this whole scheme of protecting Gregory and everything, we'll tear you apart and we'll put your endoskeleton, a new endo and everything. So that's also called out as well. Interesting.
Never been allowed in here before. This must be where I was born.
He says this in the exact same room the Help Wanted 2 minigame takes place in. This is where the endos are given their personalities and taught how to behave. When we teach the correct behavior, it displays a check mark. This is actually laid out on the doors in this area in Security Breach. You see right and wrong behaviors matched with check marks and X's. But you'll notice that Vanny's famous purple spray paint is all over the doors, which begs the question, what was Vanny doing here? Well, to figure this out, we have to look at the door in the room where we train the endos. On the door, we see glitch traps spray painted next to an endo with bunny ears on its.
What does that mean? Well, first of all, is that Glitch Trap or is that Vanny? Because Bunny, character waving, like, could be Glitch Trap, but also could be Vanny. And we also know that Vanny's the one who uses purple spray paint, not Glitch Trap. But then again, purple is William Afton's color. Interesting. But regardless, what is this telling us? Like, training the Endo, clearly a check mark, so clearly whatever the Endo's been trained to do in this situation is the right thing, right? It's doing the right thing in this moment with 3 kids. What is that? What is it doing? What's the behavior that it's doing that it's being rewarded? Interacting with kids trusting them to later lure them to a back room and kill them like William Afton? Like, maybe? That's what it is. That's what it's being trained to do, is have kids trust them and then lure them to a back room and kill them, kind of like William Afton. Maybe? It's just a detail where it's like, what is this saying? What is this detail? Right? What is the good behavior? Because at least that's where my mind goes to it, is the kids trust you, which that leads you to lead the kids to a back room and kill them just like William Afton did. So that behavior would indeed be rewarded for AI because it's doing the good behavior, at least according to William Afton it is. And we know William Afton's cut to the AI as well with the Glitch Trap virus. So maybe that's what it's telling us? Like, I don't know, huh? I need other people to answer that for me, because that's where my mind goes to. That's my interpretation of this. But I think someone else needs to. I think we need a full theory deep dive of what this picture means. So if you have a future video reacting to this of what this picture means, you know why.
With Help Wanted 2 telling us that this room is where Endos are given personalities and taught how to behave, I think this door is indicating that the goal was to transfer Glitch Trap into the physical world through the Mimic. This door can also be found in Help Wanted 2, which tells me once again that Steelwool really wanted us to see this. After the Mimic takes a trip through the Endo daycare, what happens next? Well, this is where the sticky note room comes into play.
Oh, the sticky note room. Probably my favorite room in all of Security Breach. Just because it was fun exploring this room, trying to find answers to the post-it notes. Because it's confusing. But it's clearly a room that's full of lore and Easter eggs. So, me personally, I'm a little bit biased, but this is my favorite room.
We find out in the Tales books that the Mimic was known for drawing on multicolored sheets of paper, clearly connecting this room to the Mimic.
Writing on multicolored sheets of paper. Well, hold up.
The Endo daycare, what happens next? Well, this is where the sticky note room comes into play.
Writing on multicolored sheets of paper. Yes, 100%. And from what I know, that is indeed a detail in the books. So, multicolored sheets of paper, writing on it, Mimic, on board with that. But the Mimic tied to this room. Why? Why would the Mimic be tied to this room? Because, if I'm not mistaken, hold up, back to the drawing board, back to Google. Let's see. If I'm not mistaken, so, the reason why I bring this up is because in this room, leading to the sticky note room, right? With all the heads and everything. It's confusing because the door to enter this is named... Hold up 1 second. If it's tied to the Mimic, then how do you explain this? Because data miners and leakers went through a source code and everything. The door you enter to get into this room is named Charlie Door. We know Charlotte, the name is interchangeable at this point. We know Charlotte is Henry's daughter and is the one that was killed by William Afton outside the pizzeria and then goes on to possess the puppet. And possess the puppet, that would explain the staff bot heads with the Nightmare Yon, the dark version of the puppet. That would explain why we see those throughout this room. So why would the Mimic be connected to this room when the name of the door is Charlie Door, which ties us to the puppet? Right? Why the puppet? Why is the door named after the puppet, but this room's connected to the Mimic? Because to my knowledge, unless it could be wrong, which maybe, but to my best of knowledge, there is no connective tissue between the puppet and the Mimic. And also, if you look at the post-it notes, a lot of them are connected to the FNAF 4 Crying Child. Even more removing the connection of the Mimic.
Find out in the Tales books that the Mimic was known for drawing on multicolored sheets of paper, clearly connecting this room to the Mimic. The book even says that the Mimic would sometimes color in the entire page, and in this room we see pages completely colored in. There's also a workstation right above this room filled with a bunch of white sticky notes, including the It Is Drawn to Sound and the Mystery Shipment notes. Also on the table at this workstation are the blueprints for the Glamrock endoskeletons, where we learn that these are the new generation of endos. All of this stuff clearly connects this room to the Mimic. So we know that the Mimic drew these pictures, but the biggest mystery is what these pictures mean. When you look at the drawings, most of them have to do with a birthday party, with a note saying birthday time, party time, a drawing of cake, pizza, balloons, kids, presents, and basically everything having to do with a birthday party.
Right. But if we look at those drawings again...
These pictures mean. When you look at the drawings, most of them have to do with a birthday party, with a note saying birthday time, party time, a drawing of cake, pizza, balloons, kids...
Okay. If we look at the drawing, I'm hoping you guys can see my cursor. You should be able to. Okay. If we go down the line of these drawings... you have pizza time, goat, family with a house. We'll get to that one later. Happy place, 3 presents, balloons, present, fun, 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 all my friends. A person, security guard having a flashlight. Party time. Play, play, play. A head of a Freddy, 3 presents, pizza time, blue, yellow, no hide, friends here, all from me, right? Like, a lot of these drawings, where's the connection with the Mimic? Because, let's face it, all these drawings are reminiscent of the FNAF 4 Crying Child. The party was for you, all for me. The Freddy down here makes sense because we know on night 5, on his birthday, the FNAF 4 Crying Child was shoved in the mouth of the Fredbear, and that's the last thing he would see before he got bitten. Blue, yellow, those are some of the blue Those are some of the lights and balloons on the stage and everything. Blue, yellow, green. The security guard with the flashlight is obviously reminiscent of Vanessa. And if we believe that Gregory is a robot version of the FNAF 4 Crying Child, that's how Vanessa would be connected to it, while also keeping the FNAF 4 Crying Child connection still there, right? Family with the house, also paying attention to the FNAF 4 Crying Child. Like, very clearly, these drawings paint the connection of the FNAF 4 Crying Child being connected. Where is the tissue with the mimic? Right? Because the party was for you. The party was for the Crying Child, not the mimic.
Its presence and basically everything having to do with the birthday party. I've spent the last 2 years looking at these sticky notes trying to figure out what this birthday party means. The mimic in the books never attends any sort of birthday parties.
Right.
So why would the mimic in the games want to draw about birthday parties?
Right. That's my issue. Because we know there is a birthday party referenced in the series, and we know that birthday party is referenced the FNAF 4 Crying Child. So why would there be a connection with the mimic when we know there's a birthday party already connected to a character? It's also connected to a Freddy head with Fredbear.
Well, I think the answer might have been right in front of us the whole time. I've spent an embarrassing amount of time looking at these 3 images, the texture files for the sticky notes, trying to figure out what they all mean. But the one thing that I've been missing is the context of the drawings. For a year and a half now, I've been saying that Security Breach is about environmental storytelling. So looking at where the sticky notes are placed in this room is almost as important as what's drawn on them.
Agreed.
And in the sticky note room, there's some key drawings that Steelwool obviously wanted us to see. There's the drawings clearly sitting on top of the cardboard box in front of a candle. There's "This is my home, leave" clearly on display as well. But even then, these things are not organized whatsoever. They're scattered all over the place, except for one spot. In the back of the room behind this wooden post, you can find 6 sticky notes that are unlike the rest. In a room full of drawings scattered everywhere, these are perfectly lined up in a grid and being lit by a candle.
That is important. Right? That is important.
Looking closer at them, I noticed that these were the sticky notes with the arrows on them. The drawings with the arrows always confused me, until I looked at the rest of the drawings in this grid. We see pictures of kids, fun and games, and then stop.
Kids, fun and games, stop. It's very blurry. It's very hard to see. Sorry. Let's see. STO. And then it kind of stops. So maybe it's a stop. It's very hard to make out what this is referencing. Hell, even the ones that aren't even called out. Like, in the top right corner, there's 3 balloons and then a 4th balloon that is scribbled in. What's that supposed to mean? And in the middle one, there's an arrow, maybe a sun, and then one of those squiggly lines. And then what's this one in the corner with this blue? Y or X I D 7? Person? Stick figure? Henry Stickmin? Right? Like, what are these?
Go. With the context of the kids, the arrows, and stop go, it looks to me like these are directions. As if someone was directing the mimic throughout the Pizzaplex, passing a bunch of kids, birthday parties, pizza, fun and games, and balloons. If the mimic really was present throughout the Pizzaplex, like we see in the duffel bag message earlier about the creepy bot and the "it is drawn to sound" note, then it would make sense that it would draw about birthday parties. The Pizzaplex is a giant place where birthday parties are being held. All it's seeing in this place is birthday parties.
Then why? Okay. If that is true, then I might come back to this. Then why is there a post-it note that says "all for me" with a present? Right? All for me. The party was for me. This party is for me. Why would the mimic why would the mimic write that? Right? The other ones, sure, I can see the argument. But why would there be a post-it note saying "all from me," referencing a party? There would be no reason for the Mimic to write that. You know? Like, that's the one post-it note that is important that people call attention to. And my main counterpoint, it's like, okay, then explain that one. The "all for me" one. How is that connected to the Mimic? Because once again, all these post-it notes connect very cleanly to the FNAF 4 Crunch, especially the "all for me" one. The Mimic, to me, unless there's something I'm not considering, people have to let me know on that. But to my knowledge, having the FNAF 4 Crown Child be connected to the poster room makes sense. The Mimic, "all for me" for the party. Someone needs to explain that connection, because at this point, I don't see. It doesn't fit cleanly.
And I think
So, just like your catchphrase, I need in more proof of how the "all for me" is connected to the Mimic. Because as it stands right now, it fits cleanly with the FNAF 4 Crying Child. The Mimic, not so much.
the person guiding the Mimic throughout the Pizzaplex and keeping it in this room was Vanessa. If you look at enough of the sticky notes, you can see evidence of two entities talking to each other. This is something that ID's Fantasy threw out there a while ago, and I completely agree. There's notes that say you and me, hello and goodbye, befriend, hide, no hide, get snack, pizza time, and obviously stop go. You even see evidence that they followed through on these notes as well. In the sewer system, you can find a little hideout featuring the drawings, a pizza, and a bunch of cups. I think this was Vanessa and the Mimic communicating with each other.
Vanessa and the Mimic communicating. Once again, my counterpoint is, if that is true, it's Vanessa and the Mimic in the post-it note room. First of all, I'm kind of on board with that, because that means Vanessa has more of an important role in the story, because let's face it, what was her role in Security Breach at all? She was supposed to be the new villain of the series and was cast aside, and now her story's kind of over, and now it's Cassie now. So it's very underwhelming. So that gives Vanessa a purpose, thank God. But then why is the door named Charlie Door? If it's Vanessa and the Mimic, how is the door named Charlie then in the source code? If it was not named Charlie Door, I can see the point and I'm on board with this theory. But the fact that it's named Charlie Door, and very intentionally so, how is Vanessa and the Mimic? Why would Vanessa and the Mimic be there in a door that's named after Charlie the puppet?
I think it's pretty clearly laid out that Vanessa was highly involved with Glitchtrap and the Mimic, whether that be through the trailers.
When I first found you, you were nothing.
There is more going on here than you realize.
Vanessa
And I'm inclined to believe in that trailer, that is when the story changed. Because you play Security Breach, or you watch someone, like me, shameless plug, you watch someone play Security Breach, and you go back and then watch that Security Breach trailer, very clearly it's different. Like, Monty was supposed to be seen as way more antagonistic threat. Same thing as Vanessa, Vanny. Two people supposed to be a big threat in the game and everything. And what do you get? Not much. So, seeing the trailer, something in that story changed, which is disappointing. I would pay money to see what the actual game was, what it was intended to be, right? Kind of like how movies release like unedited director's cuts. I would want to see a director's cut of Security Breach, where I want to know the game, the story that was meant to be told without the cuts, without changes, right? That lines up more with the trailer, because the trailer does not line up with the game what we got. Because maybe Vanessa gets a bigger part. I would like to see that.
In Help Wanted,
Don't worry. I'll be ready. And I won't let you down.
or the spray paint in the Endo daycare from earlier. She was clearly heavily involved with the Mimic, and I think that's also shown to us through this drawing in the sticky note room. This drawing of someone holding a flashlight is a lot different than the other drawings of kids wearing birthday hats. That's because I think this could be a drawing of Vanessa, holding her flashlight and wearing her security hat, further solidifying her being present down there. But even then, the drawing didn't fully convince me. That could be any security guard. The thing that really convinced me was this. When you're going through the sewer section of the game, you pass by the little hideout and a bunch of drawings, eventually leading you to the sticky note room. But right before you get there, one character comes out of nowhere and starts chasing you all the way to the sticky note room. Vanny. Help Wanted 2 explains to us that when an Endo is being trained in the Endo daycare, it starts off as a blank robot,
Think of the staff bot in front of you as a blank canvas.
then essentially grows up as you teach it more and more.
Congratulations, you are now teaching at a 4th grade level. Good job. You are now teaching at a junior high level.
This is exactly what we see with the different phases of the drawings. What once started as a robot talking in binary slowly started growing up and becoming more intelligent.
And AR, blah, blah. In the post-it notes, it's an AI slowly coming to consciousness. That's why in the first few post-it notes that people reference in the very beginning, over here, that's why you see 0111 0111 0111 000. It's binary. It's the language of the machines, right? And it starts off with that and binary and the text squiggly lines. It's very ineligible, very hard to make out, very hard to read. But then over time, the text gets cleaner because they're slowly coming to consciousness and slowly getting better and train up as an AI, which, yeah, 100%.
With the drawings and handwriting becoming better and better. Vanny was training the Mimic to be a robotic recreation of William Afton.
Vanny trained the Mimic to be William Afton. Well, first of all, that hinges on what is Glitchtrap to you. Is he the Mimic? Is he William Afton again, that he always comes back? Is it a computer software virus? Like, what is Glitchtrap to you? Right? Is it a physical, actual thing? Or is it code, digital, just a virus? Right? That is what that idea hinges on to me. Second of all, Vanny with the Endos and the Mimic. Maybe? Because I know in Security Breach, Vanessa has an email that you get throughout the game, one of the digital emails that you get in those bags. She says something like, you know, the little teeny music command events, they were stolen everything, and I reported a break-in, but we believe that Vanessa was the one who broke through the glass, stole the tiny music man and put them in the vents, and reported as a break-in to cover it as an alibi. We also theorize that Vanessa uses the security bots to take out previous employees, and she also uses theft bots in one of the endings to rip and disassemble Freddy and everything. We see that anime and everything. So maybe also she uses the Endos? Maybe. I mean, I guess I can see a point because that hasn't stopped her from using other animatronics in the Pizza Plats. Maybe. Okay. Maybe I'm on board with that. Okay. Nope, I agree. I can see it. I can see a world where Vanessa uses the Endos to do her bidding and everything. Because she does it for other animatronics in the Pizza Plats, so I can see it.
This is why we see a robotic recreation of the Afton family. Vanessa was showing the Mimic that this was its family.
The Mimic, that was the Mimic's family. Why would that be the Mimic's family? Right? Why would the Mimic be connected to the Aftons? Right? Why would the Mimic be connected to the Aftons? Because if you go back to the Mimic story, the Mimic is connected to Edwin and David. That's their story. And the popular theory out there, assumption to the point where people accept it as a fact in the series, but once again, it's never been confirmed, is Edwin is a stand-in for Henry, who is William Afton's business partner. So, not connected to the Aftons at all. So, why would the Mimic be connected to that? Right? Instead of it making more sense where it would be connected to the FNAF 4 crying child, who is an Afton. You see Belore, who we've always assumed is Mrs. Afton. William Afton is the one in the top hat. Baby Elizabeth Afton is the crying child's sister. And you have this staff bot at the very end with his head off, which very clearly is very reminiscent of the FNAF 4 crying child because his head was bitten off by Fredbear. So that's a stronger connection to the Afton family, the FNAF 4 crying child, than the Mimic. Right? Like, this would be the FNAF 4 crying child's family, not the Mimic.
And that this was its home. But as the Mimic started growing up, it started becoming more aware. It started wanting things for itself and getting possessive over what it had, eventually leading it to kick out anyone who stepped foot in its home. I believe that Burn Trap is the result of Glitchtrap's plan working, entering the physical world through the Mimic. But there's two people who stopped that from happening: Gregory and Cassie's dad. In Ruin, we learned that the Burn Trap ending is not the canon ending to Security Breach. The canon ending is the Princess Quest ending, where Gregory destroys Glitchtrap and frees Vanessa. We also learned that after Gregory freed Vanessa, they likely caught the Mimic and trapped it in the basement, like we hear in the Candy Cadet's story.
Is it possible that multiple endings in Security Breach are canon and did happen? Is it possible that the Burn Trap ending with the blob, that's what caused the earthquake to happen at the beginning of the Pizza Plets, but the Princess Quest ending is the one that actually is canon? Like, could it be possible that multiple endings happened? Like, Burn Trap, the blob happened. That's what caused the, once again, earthquake for the Pizza Plets to get shut down and everything. That's why it's in Ruin. But the Princess Quest is the canon ending.
The monster in the woods started another carpet and kept it locked in the basement.
But as we learn in Help Wanted 2, Gregory didn't destroy all of Glitchtrap. A piece of him still remained, and Cassie's dad was the one who destroyed that piece in Princess Quest 4.
Hold on, I'm trying to think. The story from Ruin. Hold up. Hold up. You know what I'm going to do? Can we see the story? Okay. So I'm going to pull up the story from Candy Cadet from Ruin. Because I don't know if I ever brought this up. Okay. I hope that looks good. So this is the Candy Cadet story from Ruin. First of all, I said this in a past theory, reacting to the Candy Cadet stories. Candy Cadet, S tier, one of my favorite characters in the entire series. He's up there with Music Man as my favorite characters in the entire series. So anytime we get Candy Cadet appearance, is always appreciated. So this is a story from Ruin. Now I'll tell you a story about a mother and a little boy who lived alone in a cabin in the dark woods. There was a monster in the woods, but the mother caught it and kept it locked in the basement. The mother always made scary noises at night, but the mother would tell the boy not to worry because it could never get out. Then she would sing the boy lullaby to sleep. One day the monster stopped growing and instead listened and learned the lullaby. The next day, when the mother went out to find food, the monster sang the lullaby from the basement. The little boy heard the lullaby and opened the door. And that's when it ended. And presumably the boy got killed. Right? Because, let's face it, kids dying in FNAF is, well, pretty common. So, off rip, let's just address the elephants in the room. The monster is very clearly the Mimic. Right? The monster was locked in the basement. Right? One day, the monster stopped growling and said, listened and learned the lullaby, mimicked it, right? And let's face it, we also, think about this as well. If it's not already obvious enough that the monster in this story is standing for the Mimic. Think about when we get this story. We get this story at the very end of Ruin when Cassie is just about to open the door and get tricked by the Mimic. Right? This is not happening at the beginning of the game when it's several hours later we see the Mimic. No. This is happening like 5 minutes before we see the Mimic. So, very clearly, the monster is meant to be the Mimic. Now, here's a couple problems with that. The little boy, is it Gregory or not? Right? Because then who is the mother? Vanessa? Vanessa is the mother to Gregory? That would be weird. Right? That would be very weird. But my guess, just reading off this, it's a little gender swap. The little boy is Cassie because they're the one who were lured by the lullaby, Gregory's voice throughout this whole game, and opened the door. They opened the door, removed all security nodes, and found and opened the door to the Mimic and released it. Right? The mother would be Cassie's dad. It's weird. It's weird that in the story it's a mother and a son, but at least in my interpretation is reading this, it's instead a daughter and a dad. But let's face it. We know that Cassie's dad is a Fazbear technician, has a connection to the Vanny Virtual Augmented Neural Network integration mask, right? So they would know about the pizzaplets. They would know about the Mimic, right? They would know about the Mimic AI software, right? Since Recap and VR Help 1 and 2, we play as Cassie's dad, and one of the twists in that game is we are wearing the Vanny mask. The same mask that we give to Cassie, our daughter, to then get integrated into the Vanny network and become the new Vanny, right? So, very clearly, Cassie's dad knows about the Vanny mask and knows about the AI network that's tied to that mask, right? So, they in turn would know about the Mimic. They would have sealed it away. I know a popular theory out there is Cassie's dad is the one that has installed all the security nodes, right? I don't know if I can go that far, but I know that's a popular theory out there. But at the end of the day, a son who hears noises is led astray by same noises, is tricked, led down to the basement under Roxy Raceway, heard the lullaby, heard Gregory's voice, which, let's face it, that's what the entire game is Cassie hearing Gregory's voice, following it to the basement under Roxy Raceway, and open the door, releasing all the security nodes, and unlock and releasing the Mimic. That's literally what Ruin is. It doesn't fit cleanly because the genders are swapped, but to me, that's my interpretation reading this script of the story. Is the little boy is Cassie, the mother is her dad. It's a little swap, and the monster is obviously the Mimic.
This is why when we finally meet the Mimic in Ruin, there's no trace of Glitchtrap or William Afton left. Gregory and Cassie's dad destroyed it all, leaving the plain old Mimic left to be found by Cassie in the basement. We learn in Security Breach that Vanessa was sent to the Pizzaplex for a reason.
I'm needed somewhere else now. Thank you.
And I believe that reason was to help Glitchtrap enter the physical world through the Mimic.
Agreed. I mean, that seems cut and dry. It's another one that it's an assumption because it was never been confirmed, but 1,000%, Vanessa is important to William Afton Glitchtrap, and that's why they were put in the Pizzaplex, because we see it in the emails as well. The messages we get, the digital messages we get throughout Security Breach of how, we interviewed Vanessa, and even though she seems like bright and eager, we do not recommend her for the position because she doesn't have any prior security experience. Yet, even though she doesn't have any experience, she still got the job as head of security guard. Why? Oh, it's because she has the Glitchtrap virus, Vanessa Vanny network in her. That's why.
After shipping the Mimic to the Pizzaplex, Vanessa uses the Endo Daycare to turn the Mimic into this robotic recreation of William Afton. She keeps the Mimic in the sticky note room, telling it that this was its family and that this was its home. But after Gregory frees Vanessa and destroys most of Glitchtrap, they lock the Mimic in the basement, where it eventually will trick Cassie into setting it free. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to...
I will say, that is one detail that I do like about that theory, is Gregory having a prior experience or connection to the Mimic. Because that just makes sense. Because that never gets explained to us, is how does the Mimic mimic Gregory's voice throughout the game, right? Because we know in Ruin as well, Cassie's voice was mimicked by the Helpy AI because Cassie has been talking throughout this game and everything. So that's how they were able to mimic her voice because they've heard it before. But how was Gregory's voice mimicked? That would only mean his voice got mimicked because they have encountered the Mimic before. That's how they got in contact and were able to mimic his voice. So that to this day has never been explained. And hopefully other theories come out there. It's like, hey, Gregory's had past experience with the Mimic. Why and how? So hopefully that is a segue to other theories of learning Gregory's full history with the Mimic. Because once again, very clearly, they had some experience with the Mimic. Because how else was Gregory's voice available to be mimicked? The only way you can think of his voice being mimicked is it was heard before, right? It's the same thing with the lullaby from Kenny Cadet story. The monster heard the lullaby and then listened and then mimicked it. The lullaby, being Gregory's voice, listened and mimicked it. So Gregory's had an experience with the Mimic that still has not been explained. And hopefully one day that does get explained of Gregory's experience with the Mimic, because that's something that needs to be solved still. But I think I said all my thoughts on this theory as I was reacting to it. Once again, some things still don't fit cleanly. I don't know if the FNAF AR animatronics are connected to the blob, because how do you explain how some animatronics who weren't in FNAF AR were still in the blob anyway? And then how do you explain animatronics like the puppet, their masks, tears on the mask are gone? How do you explain that? And then other ones like FNAF Mangle, both eyes are lit up red. But then like Baby, it's either one eye's light red or both are gone. Right? It's weird details. Like, how do you explain that? And then how do you explain the post-it room in Security Breach named Charlie Door, but is connected to two other characters, neither of which have a connection to Charlie whatsoever? That is another one I think needs to be a little bit more worked out, because why else is Charlie mentioned then? Because if Charlie's Door was not a thing, if it was not mentioned, it was just plain old door, that's what it was named in the source code and everything, and Vanessa and the Mimic are the ones in there, there's evidence to it, I can see it. It doesn't fit too cleanly, in my opinion, still. FNAF 4 Crown Child fits a lot better than the Mimic, right? Fits a lot better. And Vanny being down there, sure, I can see a point where that makes sense. But why is the door named Charlie if two characters have no connection to the Charlie whatsoever? Why is that their room? Right? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, if you want to say, oh, the reason why it's Charlie Door is because there's heads of the staff boss who are Nightmare Own, which is the reverse dark emo version of the puppet who is Charlie. I mean, I guess that's why it's Charlie Doors, because there's heads of Nightmare Own, which is a dark version of Charlie. Like, maybe, but like that doesn't feel like a satisfying answer then. Like, it's an answer, but it's not satisfying. So hopefully we get answers to that. Ideally, I want all the answers to the Mimic. I said this when I was doing my reaction analysis of my Mimic video, that I want to know everything possible about the Mimic. I want to know what the technology is for the Mimic. I want to know what makes a Mimic and what doesn't make a Mimic. Because I feel like it is still up to interpretation of what is a Mimic and what isn't. Because, for instance, is Glitch Trap a Mimic? Is Burn Trap a Mimic? Who knows, right?